Welcome back. We are now going to move through some slides on cognitive development in early childhood, and we are going to look specifically at Piaget and Vygotsky and their theories of cognitive development. Now, hopefully you have a little bit of background since we have completed the theorist research paper assignment and you have completed the readings on the theorists. And so now that you have some background, let's break this down a little bit on what these theories look like um, during the early childhood years. All right, and so Piaget would say that children in the early childhood years are in the pre-operational stage of his theory of cognitive development, and he defined the preoperational stage by two substages: the symbolic function stage, which lasts between the ages of 2 and 4, and the intuitive thought substage, which lasts between the ages of 4 and 7. During the symbolic function stage, children begin to mentally represent objects that are not present. For example, drawing a picture to represent a house. And so when we talked about Rhoda Kellogg and her travels and how she collected samples of children's artwork, and she could see a clear progression of children's artistic development by age, this would also suggest that children who are in the symbolic function substage of preoperational thought are using their scribbles and their emergent drawings and writings to represent things that are no longer present. For example, a child drawing a picture to represent a house. The second substage of preoperational thought is the intuitive thought substage. And children begin asking lots of questions of adults. They seem sure of their understandings, but maybe don't know how they came to their understandings. So they're looking for answers and maybe asking a lot of why questions and trying to understand how things work. Centration and a lack of conservation also seem to characterize preoperational thinkers. All right, Vygotsky's theory. Vygotsky also had a theory of cognitive development, and he believed that children actively construct their knowledge and understanding, and that children are active participants in their own development. And he also believed that children need social interactions as they learn. So according to Vygotsky, children construct their knowledge through social interactions with others and use language to communicate with others and to plan, guide, and monitor their own behavior to help them solve problems. So I've got some maybe new concepts for some of you up there, maybe not so new for others. ZPD, or Zone of Proximal Development, is Vygotsky's term for the range of tasks that are too difficult for children to achieve alone, but can be achieved with guidance or assistance from a more knowledgeable other. A more knowledgeable other could be a more skilled child or an adult. Scaffolding is the level of support that the more knowledgeable other offers to the child. The more knowledgeable other alters their guidance to fit the child's level of performance. So an example of this might be a child who is working on a puzzle, for instance. Maybe they can't find the right placement for the piece, but when the teacher or a more skilled peer says, "Have you tried turning it over?" or "I wonder what would happen if you tried a different piece." Those are examples of scaffolding. The more knowledgeable other offers just enough hints and assistance to ensure success without actually giving the child the answer. And then children use language, again, to communicate and interact with others, both in social settings and to solve problems. And Vygotsky believed that language and thought, that all mental functions have external and social origins. And he believed that children needed, or needs to, communicate with others before they can focus inward on their own thoughts. And so that's just describing some of the difference between private speech and inner speech. All right, so let's talk about how children process information. And so when we talked about brain development and growth in the gross motor and physical development presentation, we did talk about the increase of dopamine, which helps and supports children pay attention longer on certain tasks. So we can look at this attention in two ways: executive function or executive attention, which is when a child is focused on planning, allocating their attention goals, finding errors or detecting errors in their work, and compensation or making up for what they might be missing. Where sustained attention is really characterized by focused and extended engagement with an object. And then memory. Short-term memory, that's just this idea that individuals retain information for up to 30 seconds. So an example would be if I asked you to recall or repeat a word, word for word, something I just said, your ability to recall quickly and accurately would be a measure of your short-term memory. Short-term memory does increase with time and experience. Long-term memory of young children can be highly suggestible. While some children's long-term memory can be fairly accurate with guided prompts, some children are highly susceptible to suggestion, which can lead to false memories. And so, for example, some of the memories I think I have about my childhood may really just be my mom telling me stories of my childhood, and there's not really any way for me to know the difference between the two, if it's actually a long-term memory or if it's just a memory of my mom telling me. But I do have some long-term memories that I do recall as actual memories, and they're usually linked to something sensory and an emotion. All right. So continuing on with information processing, we talked before about executive attention. Let's talk about this in terms of executive functioning. So executive functioning really requires people to engage in self-regulatory behaviors in order to accomplish a goal-directed task. So let's break this down a little bit. Sometimes thinking of executive function in relation to problem solving is reviewing, because it shows that executive functioning can be broken down into subsections or subfunctions. Or rather, in order to deliberately solve a problem, one needs to do several smaller things in a specific sequence. And so you can see I've put up there for you those steps in a very specific sequence, and I'm going to give you an example. So step one, represent the problem. And so for my example, I decided to talk about a child building a structure in the block area. For step one, a child may first have a mental image or maybe even a drawn diagram representing the structure that they wish to build. And then step two, come up with a plan for solving the problem. The child may decide how much space is needed, how tall they will build their structure, which blocks that they are going to need. And then step three is actually building the block structure. And then step four is one of the harder steps in the process, evaluating the adequacy of the attempted solution. So evaluating their structure, sitting back and being able to say, if I use this block here, it will balance the other side. Having those judgments or those evaluative thoughts about their structure. Hopefully the example helped a little bit. All right, so we're going to stop here. This will wrap up our discussion of cognitive development. Oh, no, we're going to do one more. Sorry, this is where I said I might fumble. What am I missing? We're going to talk about, quickly, just about language learning in young children. So we've talked about cognitive development and how also the brain is growing rapidly in response to new language that children are learning. But we also need to break down what are the rule systems of language. So young children are grasping the language of rules. See, this is where I need to stop talking. Young children are grasping the language rules system. They are making sense of the sounds in words and the rules of morphology. They are also figuring out the order of words, the meaning of words, and how to engage in conversations. And so phonology, that's just the sounds in language. And the morphology, those are the rules of words. So we say feet, not foot. So we say went, not goed. Syntax is the order of words, and I always think of Yoda when I think of syntax. He, for some reason, his sentences still make sense, but they're all mixed up and out of order. And then semantics, that's just the meaning of words. We have a very complex English language where one word can sound the same, be spelled differently, and have different meanings. For example, there, and there. So all three spelled differently, all used within a context, could mean something completely different. And then between the ages of 18 months and 6 years, children are learning an estimated one new word an hour. That's 14,000 words by the beginning of first grade. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so this is where we're going to stop. We're going to stop here. And I will see you next when we are discussing important features of young children's education. All right, guys, see you soon.